Welcome back to the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast here on Sunday, June 24th, 2018. Thank you so much again for tuning in either on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or YouTube. Keep in mind, if this video goes longer than 10 minutes on YouTube, check down in the description for the link to listen to the rest of the episode on SoundCloud. With that, let's get started jumping right into it, where this morning I watched a very uncontested World Cup game, I guess you could say. It was between England and Panama, England getting the 6-1 win. And I went back to a podcast I did a couple days ago where I was talking about Group B with that stacked group in Spain, Portugal, Iran, and Morocco. And going into the tournament, you looked at, okay, Spain and Portugal are the obvious two teams to advance. And while they do lead the group right now, Morocco gave Portugal a very good game, and you could argue that Morocco should have either won that or tied that game. Then Iran also played Spain very tightly, and I got on this conversation discussing how maybe this World Cup expanding was not such a terrible idea. Because you look at teams like Iran and Morocco, definitely not your first choices to be on the world stage, and yet they're competing with world-class teams in Spain and Portugal very, very well. However, today, when you look down in Group G, we start to understand why the World Cup might just be at its max right now with 32 teams, and that it shouldn't really expand with 16 more. Because this morning, England beat Panama 6-1. Belgium's also beat Tunisia 5-2, I think it was yesterday. And you look at that group, England and Belgium, obviously the top two teams, both with 6 points. Tunisia, 0 points, a -4 goal differential. They've given up 7. And Panama, 0 points, -8 goal differential. And you start to look at that. And while there are a couple examples of teams where they weren't expected to get into the tournament, they've played pretty well, there's an overwhelming majority of teams where you can also argue we've kind of reached our max. Where, look at Saudi Arabia in Group A, giving up 5 goals to Russia. Now, they did bounce back and only lose 1-0 to a very good Uruguay team, but still, you're at -6 with 0 points. Egypt has given up 4 goals and -3 with 0 points. And the game against Russia wasn't even that close. So, as you look at the bottom of these groups, while there are these examples of teams such as Morocco doing well, Iran competing, a tough Group D with Croatia, Nigeria, Iceland, and Argentina, where Argentina surprisingly is last with a -3 goal differential. We did not expect that coming into the tournament. So as you look at these groups, you begin to understand and see maybe we're at our max. Because, yes, Costa Rica has played pretty solid, but they're also at 0 points with a -3 goal differential. And it almost seems like, especially going into this tournament, in every group there seems to be at least one team or so where there's they're obvious letdown. Whether it's a team where you say they're not that good, they're just not good enough to compete. Even in a group where people consider it to be the best group in the tournament coming in, Group F, with Mexico, Germany, Sweden, and South Korea. South Korea's played well, but they're just not good enough to advance. And while I'm not saying they shouldn't be in the World Cup, I say they should. They're obviously showing they're on that level. What we're getting is, even with 32 teams, we're getting Saudi Arabia. We're getting Panama, Tunisia. We're getting these teams who really aren't on the level to compete. And my worry is that the World Cup is already at about a month long. It started on June 14th this year. It's going to end on July 15th. So it's a day over a month. But we can call it 30 days just to kind of round it. And that's a long time. That's longer than the Olympics. And my worry is while everyone in the world loves the World Cup, even though in America, there's a lot of Americans that love the Cup, the ratings are down this year, and that's just because the U.S. is not in it, and that'll obviously change, hopefully, by the next World Cup, but definitely by 2026 when they host it, because they have to be in there because they're a host nation. And what I wonder is it getting too watered down? Is 32 just the max and we should just cut it off there? Because this is something we've had to deal with in college basketball as well. 64 teams to 68, and how many teams should there really be allowed in, play-in games and all of that. And when I look at an event that takes a month, that has 32 participants, and with 32 there are still teams that are significantly lagging behind, I just don't think that we need to have 48 teams. Where if we do have 48 teams, there's going to be too many teams at the bottom. I mean, are there really 16 other teams in the world right now that can compete on this big of a world stage? Legitimately, could they be competitive and trying to get to the round of 16? I don't know. I certainly don't think so. And now, the argument for this might be that the group stage won't matter as much, that it'll just be something that people really won't care as much about, and that it'll really get going when it gets into single elimination. And then since there won't be any of these groups of death, that all the big name teams will be in the single elimination part, and once everyone gets to the single elimination part, it'll really bring everything up. It'll really dramatize everything. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it'll just water down the product to the point where, one, there's still World Cup qualifiers that matter. Where if you're a big nation, I'm looking at you, United States, Netherlands, Italy, these big nations where you gotta compete, you gotta bring it in order to make it. If the World Cup if it goes to 48 teams, World Cup qualifying all of a sudden doesn't even really matter. Because if there's 16 more teams, okay, US is going to be, would have been in it this year. Netherlands, Italy would have been in it this year. And a bunch of other teams who wouldn't deserve it. But by expanding to 48, you lose World Cup qualifying, having any mattering, basically. Because the only countries that'll really be at danger of even qualifying are these little, not really soccer-dependent nations where people really don't care about as much. Also, the group stage is going to be significantly less important, as there's going to be so many different groups with so many more teams. There's going to be no group where you look at it and say, that's stacked. There's going to be a team or two teams that are obviously at the top of that group, that they're no doubt going to move on, and it won't be as fun of a group stage, because part of the fun of the World Cup is this insane group part, where every game really does matter. Argentina slips up and ties Iceland. Okay, now they have 1 point. Well, okay, they still have 2 games to go, but all of a sudden they play against Croatia, they miss a step, they lose 3-0. Now Argentina can't make it past. And while that is an argument saying, hey, it's even tough it might be too tough to move on, the bigger argument is, it means that the World Cup matters. That every game really matters. That you can't slack off for any game in the World Cup. And that's how it should be. During World Cup qualifying, you should be able to take maybe a game or two off if you're Argentina and you're playing against some small South American nation. I understand that. I get that. But even in World Cup qualifying for a place such as Europe, you got to be able to bring it every game, because there's a ton of talent in all those nations. And then once you get to the World Cup, it should be just like the Olympics. There shouldn't be any take this off. It should be give it your best because you're on the world stage. This happens once every 4 years. Every game has to matter. And I'd rather have a jam-packed month of soccer every single 4 years, where 3 times a day there's games that matter. There's close games. Yes, every once in a while we'll get a Panama, England. Yes, every once in a while we'll get a Russia and Saudi Arabia. Okay, I'll take that. But if that means that I still get all these different groups with all these different games that matter, you're seeing Japan and Senegal might move on. You're seeing Argentina falter against Croatia. You're seeing the best players in the world play these 3 games just to try and move on to the next round. That, to me, as a soccer fan, is exactly what I want. I want all that action. I want all of that drama.